Intermittent fasting versus the ketogenic diet. Which one is better for health? Which one is better for fat loss? But most importantly, what is the most sustainable? By the end of this video, you will know exactly which one is right for you. I'm Max Lowry. I'm an author, online coach, and personal trainer. I developed the 2 meal day, which is my own method of intermittent fasting. I've been fasting for over 10 years, and I've also helped thousands of people build intermittent fasting into their life in a sustainable way. Before intermittent fasting, I incorporated the ketogenic diet for over a year.
Impressive.
That's quite a long time. So I'm in a pretty good position to talk about both methods. Let's start with the ketogenic diet. What is it? Essentially, a ketogenic diet is going to reduce the amount of carbohydrates that you are eating. It was initially introduced in a medical environment to treat epilepsy patients in the early 1900s. But recently, there has been a resurgence in the last 10 years, kind of following on from the popularity of the Atkins diet, which is also a low carbohydrate diet.
I'm on Atkins.
What?
The goal of the ketogenic diet is to push you into ketosis, which is when essentially you are breaking down fat tissue into fatty acids, which can then be converted into ketones and used to fuel you through the day. It's important to know that this is a completely natural process. Everyone has this ability to go into ketosis. And in fact, we probably wouldn't have got to this stage in human evolution if we didn't have this powerful method of breaking down our stored energy. Because all fat is stored energy. And in fact, even myself, I've worked out that I have roughly 30 or 40,000 calories of fat to tap into as a form of stored energy. And I have quite a low body fat. Being able to effortlessly shift from using carbohydrates from food and the glycogen in your muscles and your liver into using fat is known as metabolic flexibility. Being metabolically flexible has been shown to greatly decrease the likelihood of Alzheimer's and type 2 diabetes.
No way.
The ketogenic diet aims to push you into ketosis by reducing carbohydrates, whether it's grains, simple sugars, starchy carbohydrates, potatoes, pasta, high sugar fruits, all kind of biscuits and sweets, everything like that.
I don't eat carbs.
Instead, the focus is very much on meat, dairy, nuts, and vegetables that don't contain a lot of sugar. Usually people that incorporate the ketogenic diet are aiming to consume less than 25 grams net carbs per day, which is pretty low.
Seriously?
So what are the benefits of the ketogenic diet? So obviously the big one that people get into is they start keto because they want to lose weight. And there does seem to be short-term weight loss with the ketogenic diet. But many people believe that's because ketosis somehow is magic and it has superiority over different ways of eating.
You're a wizard, Harry.
When in actual fact, what actually happens is that eating a high-fat, medium protein, low carbohydrate diet actually makes eating in a calorie deficit a bit easier for most people. And ultimately, you're getting the fat loss from being in a calorie deficit. Anything that makes eating in a calorie deficit easier is a good thing. It's much harder to binge and gorge on high fat and high protein foods, whereas high carbohydrate foods are often much easier to overconsume. But this benefit does come with a caveat, right? And the reason why people are so dogmatic about the ketogenic diet is because you do get this massive shift in the number on the scale when you incorporate keto, when you drop carbohydrates. That doesn't mean that you're actually losing fat. What that is, that's going to be you losing water. Because when you consume carbohydrates, you store those carbs as glycogen in the muscles and the liver. For every gram of glycogen you have in your body, you're going to store 1 to 3 grams of water. So if you suddenly cut out carbohydrates, it means you're going to be storing less glycogen and therefore storing less water. And the shift on the scale can be dramatic, but like I said, it's not fat. You're not going to lose 1 or 2 kilos of fat in 1 or 2 days. It takes a lot longer than that. Damn it! And this works the other way around as well. Many people reduce their carbohydrates, and then obviously some kind of social occasion happens and you cave, you eat some carbohydrates. What many people will do, they will then weigh themselves the next day and the number on the scale has shot up 1 or 2 kilos. Again, this is not fat, this is water. So this massive fluctuation that this can have on the number on the scales is one of many reasons why people really do think that keto is superior to other diets. But ultimately, people lose weight because it makes it easier to eat in a calorie deficit in the short term. And we'll get to what I mean by short term shortly. People also do seem to experience more stable energy levels. And the reason for that is because when you're not eating carbohydrates frequently throughout the day, you're going to have more stable blood sugar levels. Because on the whole, carbohydrates will raise your blood sugar levels and have a bigger effect on your blood sugar levels than fat and protein. So by reducing the carbohydrates, you can have more stable blood sugar and therefore more stable energy levels. Equally, if you are incorporating a ketogenic diet and you do become more metabolically flexible, a side effect will be improved energy levels. And people also do seem to feel less hungry when they're incorporating the ketogenic diet. Again, regularly eating carbohydrates through the day, breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner, can have a big impact on the blood sugar levels and therefore also impact hunger levels. So these three benefits are the key ones that people seem to experience on a day-to-day basis using the ketogenic diet. There is also a lot of research to suggest that potentially the ketogenic diet can improve insulin sensitivity because of its effect on blood sugar levels. And of course, we do have that initial therapeutic use for epilepsy, which was the reason why it was incorporated in the first place. All right, so those are the benefits. What about the disadvantages of the ketogenic diet? And I know this from first-hand experience because I did manage to incorporate the keto diet for almost a year pretty consistently. The biggest disadvantage of the ketogenic diet is that for 99% of people, it is unsustainable. You cannot sustain that level of restriction for very long. It is incredibly restrictive. Anyone that has done the keto diet knows this. The fact that I managed to do it for a year is saying something because I'm probably in the minority. In fact, let me know in the comments below. Are any of you on a ketogenic diet now? How long have you been able to maintain it? It's restrictive because you're cutting out an entire food group, carbohydrates, and carbohydrates are enjoyable, okay? No one here doesn't like eating carbohydrates, and if you say that you do, you're lying. Of course, carbohydrates do come with a cost potentially of energy levels and bloating and things like that, but everyone enjoys eating them. Really, as a fat loss coach, I'm not interested in short-term quick fixes. I'm interested in long-term behavioral change. And for 99% of people, in my experience as a coach working with many people, it is not sustainable. Another big disadvantage is that can exacerbate and perpetuate a negative relationship with food. I personally experienced when following the ketogenic diet, and it took me a very long time to reshape the way that I think about carbohydrates. I have never been someone that has had an issue with my relationship with food. However, having done the ketogenic diet for a long time, I did feel guilty about eating carbohydrates for a long time. And not only that, I made other people feel guilty for eating carbohydrates, like my partner, my friends, my family, and sometimes even my clients.
Yes, they must be punished.
Essentially, the ketogenic diet labels all carbohydrates as bad. Really, anything that is encouraging labeling food as good or bad is going to be problematic in the long term. There is no such thing as a good or a bad food in isolation. It really is about the whole picture, and your entire life is what makes the big difference. Because really, the ultimate goal should be able to lose weight and eat carbohydrates. That is the ultimate goal, because carbohydrates are everywhere, which leads me into my next disadvantage. It's antisocial. Right? No one wants to be that person at the dinner table who is making their friends and family feel guilty for eating dessert.
How dare you?
Not only that, you go to most restaurants, if you're out and about, traveling, it is very difficult to incorporate the ketogenic diet. It takes a lot more preparation and organization. And it's not necessarily a bad thing being prepared and organized, but it basically means that you need a lot of willpower and motivation to do it. And ultimately, in my experience as a coach, you cannot depend on willpower and motivation. If you want long-term behavioral change, ideally, your habits, your behaviors need to become automatic, and you don't need to depend on willpower and motivation. The fact that it's antisocial and difficult to implement practically means that if you're trying to do it, it can really greatly affect your quality of life and potentially even your mental health. And this is why anyone with any previous eating disorders or disordered eating should be very careful with it. And even for myself, who doesn't have any history of that, it really did fundamentally impact my relationship with food. So hopefully now you know everything about the ketogenic diet. Now let's dive into intermittent fasting. So intermittent fasting is nothing new. It's been used by virtually every ancient culture and religion for thousands of years.
I'm fasting for enlightenment.
Mostly as a spiritual and cleansing and healing tool. Intermittent fasting now is the modern take on the ancient practice. Essentially, it's very simple. You just break your day or your week up into periods of eating and fasting, or eating and not eating, instead of just eating continuously throughout the day. Everyone fasts overnight. That's why breakfast is called break fast.
I never knew that.
Intermittent fasting also brings about the process of ketosis, but in a completely different way. Once you start fasting for more than 12 hours, you're potentially going to deplete your stored carbohydrates or your glycogen stores. Once those are depleted, your body's going to be forced to start using its body fat stores. There are many different types of intermittent fasting, and each type might be beneficial for a different type of person. I don't have time here today to go into every single different type, but if you do want to know more about intermittent fasting, I did create an intermittent fasting short course, and it's completely free. Click that link in the caption below, and I will teach you everything that you need to know about intermittent fasting. So what are the benefits of intermittent fasting? You'll notice here that they are very similar to the keto diet, but there are some differences. So firstly, the most popular reason people get into intermittent fasting is because of weight loss. And it does seem to be an effective short-term and long-term weight loss strategy. The reason for that is because it makes eating in a calorie deficit easier, just like the ketogenic diet does, but in a different way. Essentially, when you restrict the time in which you can consume calories, obviously you're making it harder to consume those calories. In my opinion, and as someone who's done intermittent fasting for a very long time, it really does make the process of fat loss easy and effortless because you get to eat big, satisfying meals in your eating window, but overall you're still eating less. But the big win of intermittent fasting is that you are putting yourself into a state of ketosis, you're improving your metabolic flexibility, you're losing weight, and you're eating carbohydrates.
It's too good to be true.
I mean, that is win-win right there. Again, just like the keto diet, intermittent fasting does seem to drastically improve energy levels. I'm fasted right now. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I would never dream of eating before a video like this because I would start to feel slow and lethargic. And right now I have a really high level of mental clarity, which many people do experience when they incorporate intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting will also help you to feel less hungry overall, which is incredibly powerful. And it makes perfect sense. If you are someone that grazes on food regularly throughout the day, if you entrain your body to expect food, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times in a day, then it makes sense that you're going to feel hungry all the time. And the flip side is exactly true. Once you start to reduce meal frequency, once you cut out the mindless snacking, once you extend your overnight fast, you teach your body to function optimally without food. And that is incredibly empowering. This is also another reason why intermittent fasting makes it much easier to eat in a calorie deficit, because you feel less hungry overall and therefore are eating less food. This is where the joint advantages of intermittent fasting and keto end, right? So there are some very similar benefits. However, there are also more benefits that you get from intermittent fasting. So potentially intermittent fasting can reduce inflammation and oxidative stress. It can also be used as an effective way to reduce blood pressure and potentially increase the likelihood of experiencing autophagy, which is why intermittent fasting and fasting is so popular in the anti-aging community. Autophagy is basically your cell's self-cleaning system. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail about this. If you want more detail on intermittent fasting, do check out my intermittent fasting short course. It's completely free. Get it right there below. So clearly I am slightly biased. I'm wearing a 2 meal day t-shirt. I developed my own way of intermittent fasting. It's something that I really believe in, but I like to believe that I'm pretty open-minded and I'm not someone that is going to let my bias and beliefs get in the way of hiding the disadvantages. Okay, because there are some disadvantages to the intermittent fasting way of eating. Number one, many people think that intermittent fasting is a magic pill for fat loss. It isn't. Like I mentioned earlier, it makes eating in a calorie deficit much, much easier. But you could still be in a surplus whilst incorporating intermittent fasting and therefore not lose weight or put on weight. All right? It is not some kind of magic process where you can eat as much food as you like, but as long as you've got this extended fast, therefore you're going to lose weight. And this is why really I started the 2 meal day, is because I want to change the myths and misconceptions about intermittent fasting and make it a sustainable way of life rather than something that is done in the short term. And that belief that it is a magic pill for fat loss is something that will make it just the same as any other fad diet. Women do need to be more careful with intermittent fasting, and that's because fasting is a form of stress on the body. Not all forms of stress are created equal. In fact, little bits of controlled stress like exercise, like cold water therapy, like sauna use, like fasting can make you more stress resilient and bring about incredible changes in the body. Having said that, obviously too much stress is a bad thing, and there are plenty of men and women who are undersleeping, undereating, overtraining, they're addicted to caffeine, they're drinking too much alcohol, and then they try intermittent fasting on top of those things. And for men, that might not be an issue. But for women who are more sensitive to physical stress on the body, mainly because of reproduction, that can actually affect cycles, energy levels, mood, libido, all sorts of different things. So it's not that fasting is inherently dangerous for women. It's the fact that potentially on top of other stressors, it's not going to be something that can be incorporated safely. Equally, pregnant and breastfeeding women should avoid intermittent fasting at all costs. And again, having said that, I've helped thousands of women incorporate the 2 meal day and intermittent fasting in a safe and effective way using my 30-day reset. Check that out below. Another big disadvantage, a bit like keto, is that intermittent fasting can become antisocial. If you are someone that has decided they're going to be incredibly religious and strict about their eating windows, let's say that you say you're going to finish eating at 8 p.m. and you're not going to start eating again until 12 p.m. What happens when you need to go for dinner with friends and your dinner's booked at 8:30?
Oh no, oh no, oh no.
Many people make the mistake of either not showing up to dinner or, probably even worse, turning up to dinner and not eating. I have done this in the past and I'm quite embarrassed to admit that now. But however, if you allow your intermittent fasting protocol to become antisocial, then you're doing it wrong. The key is to be flexible with it, and that way it becomes a sustainable way of life. If your sole goal is to put on muscle, then intermittent fasting might make that more difficult. Not impossible, but more difficult. Because again, in order to put on muscle, you need to eat more food and lift heavy things. And like I mentioned earlier, intermittent fasting makes it easier to eat in a calorie deficit or harder to eat more food. So if you're someone that is trying to put on muscle and that's something that is very difficult for you, then intermittent fasting is going to potentially make that harder. So which one is better for health? Which one is better for fat loss? Which one is better for long-term fat loss? In my opinion, intermittent fasting wins on virtually every single count. Yes, ketogenic diet does seem to have some short-term benefits, but I keep saying that word short-term. It's short-term. So what's the point? Ultimately, if you can't see yourself eating in this way for the rest of your life, then it's a waste of your time, money, and energy. The ultimate goal is to be able to create long-term behavioral change. Only once you're able to do that, where you stop hopping from one diet to the next, where you stop yo-yoing, losing weight, putting weight back on, and actually start to live life to the full and be the best version of yourself. Ketogenic diet has some serious disadvantages, especially potentially to your mental health, your relationship with food. And that is fundamental to having a good quality of life. With intermittent fasting, you get all the same benefits from the ketogenic diet and you get to eat carbohydrates, all right? Yes, there are some disadvantages to intermittent fasting, but not nearly as many as the ketogenic diet. When done in the right way, correctly, especially the way that I teach intermittent fasting, it can become a sustainable way of life. I've been doing it for 10 years myself pretty consistently, and so have many of my clients. So if you want to lose weight, boost your energy levels, reduce hunger, and never have to diet again, check out my free intermittent fasting short course by clicking that link below. All right, hopefully you've enjoyed that video. Please give me a like if you've enjoyed it, or even give me a dislike if you haven't enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments what you think. Are you someone that incorporates intermittent fasting? Are you someone that does keto? Have you been able to do keto consistently? If you want to join a community of like-minded people who are changing their lives with intermittent fasting, then join my 2 meal day Facebook community group. It's completely free and there's a lot of bonus tips and information in there. You can click that link below to get access to it.